Hi, everybody. I am Bunny Ellerin, and this is the first of a new series called Founder and Funder Fridays. Most of the time they'll be on Fridays. They may be on other days, but we just thought there's so much activity going on in the ecosystem. It would be great to talk about it and meet some of the new founders and funders. But to kick off, we wanted to bring in the master founder, and that is Glen de Vries. Hey, how are you?
I don't know if I can live up to master founder, but I'll try.
Oh, you are absolutely. So Glen de Vries is the co-founder of Medidata, which he co-founded in 1999. It is the world's most used clinical research platform. Medidata was acquired by Dassault Systèmes, and I didn't do that well in my poor French, in 2019. And Glen is vice chair of life sciences and healthcare. Glen wears many hats. Beyond his day job, he is a trustee of Carnegie Mellon. He is the author of The Patient Equation. He's a private pilot. And now he has a new title, astronaut. So welcome, Glen. I was on Twitter one day and I see a post from Captain Clinical, which is you, talking about how you're going on the Blue Origin. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. I know this guy. Like, he's going up? What's the deal? So before we talk about healthcare, let's talk about space. What made you do this? Yeah.
Actually, I got a couple of people who saw those things, and I actually got somebody a note from somebody who I barely speak to anymore, who I knew from second grade, who said to me, "I can't believe you're actually going to space. You've been talking about this your whole life," which kind of put into a perspective that, wow, this really is kind of a dream I've been thinking about. And honestly, it goes back to as far back as I can remember. I've always loved science. I've loved every kind of science. I was not the people, I guess, hang out in libraries anymore, but when I was hanging out in the library when I was a kid, I was always in the science section, and it could be anything from the molecular to cosmology, and anything in engineering from something mechanical to spaceships was something I was interested in. And probably obviously from the fact that we were all work together and how we know each other, my life went more into the biological and into the healthcare arena. But I carried that love of space and aviation and into kind of my adult life. Actually, there are things in my bedroom which it looks like a sconce, but it actually is supposed to remind people, or at least me, of the thrusters on the nose cone of the space shuttle, and the lights by the side of my bed kind of look a little like cool and artsy, but they're actually supposed to look like jet engines to me. So I effectively have Star Wars sheets for a 49-year-old. So like, huh?
You have like a man cave in your bedroom.
No, look, it doesn't look that man cavey, but if you know what you're looking for, it's very spacey. And I used to like sit at home as a kid poring over the Space Shuttle Operator's Manual, which you could buy in a Barnes and Noble. Remember when there were bookstores? And yes. It had like excerpts from NASA procedure books and diagrams of panels. And I would just look at it over and over again. And I think I really spent my whole life fantasizing about going to space. And then it turned into something I could actually do.
So how did it come about? Tell us about the preparation, how you got on the list.
So actually, as Medidata grew, and we were lucky enough to have the success we had, and I actually started to have, I don't know how else to describe it, like a little bit of money. And on my 40th birthday gift to myself was a reservation for Virgin Galactic. So it was really 9 years and change, that this idea that I actually could go to space became something real. And since then, and by the way, they're still working on their program, and hopefully I'll still be able to go with them at some point. But I started doing everything I could. I met as many astronauts as I could. I did zero gravity training, high gravity training in a centrifuge at NASTAR outside of Philly. I became a pilot. I turned a lot of my personal life into preparing for and getting even more excited about this eventual, I hoped, reality of being able to go to space. Blue Origin has a really cool vehicle, and from a design safety perspective, and saw the progress that they were making. People who were into it know that they did an auction. I participated in the auction. I didn't win the auction.
What was in the auction?
So they were auctioning off their first commercial seat for charity. And so by doing, I think I got myself on the list, and over the years, as I said, I knew all these people in the industry. You'd have to talk to Blue Origin about how they, picked who they picked. But if you look at me and Chris Bosshausen, who was the other paying passenger on the flight that I was on, we both happened to be, I think, advocates for STEM and people who have engineering and science backgrounds, and hopefully can translate some of the things that we experienced and why we think this is so important for people. And when the call came, it took me about 1 millisecond to say, okay, I'm going. And so, yeah, that's how it all.
All right. So, okay. Like I've watched all these, astronaut movies, and you see all the training they go through. So what kind of training did you have to go through?
Yeah. So it is not like the right stuff where, you have to be like in perfect physical condition. And by the way, William Shatner is in incredibly good physical condition for somebody, especially somebody who's 90. But somebody on the last flight was 84. Somebody on our flight was 90. So this is accessible to people, to normal people. And like I said, I did do, I think probably a lot of things that prepared me physically, maybe in some ways mentally, although I'm sure we'll talk about it. A lot of stuff was like mind blowing. There was no way I could have prepared for it. But then you do spend a couple of days learning the vehicle, learning the flight profile. You have to be in an environment that you're not used to being in. And so getting in and out of a seat is not like getting in and out of a seat normally. You have to think about, I'm going to do this with this hand and this with this hand, and think about your procedures. You come up with your plans for exactly what you're going to do during the flight. So A, you're not bumping into other people while you're doing it, and B, so you really can spend every last moment taking it all in and doing what you want to do, which like everybody else on my flight, certainly for myself, was spend as much time looking out the window as possible. And every moment of that was incredible. So,
okay, you're in, you're ready to launch.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
So I was really excited. I think that it was so kind of overwhelming from a sensory overload perspective. I don't think I was sitting there scared or nervous, but I definitely remember as digits came off the countdown timer. It was went from like 10 minutes to 9 minutes, 59 seconds, and 1 minute to 59 seconds. Each one of those moments got me more and more excited. And then I had a seat that was next to the control tower, next to the tower. And as the main engine started, you could see the colors reflected, like orange and yellow and red. And you hear this enormous roar. And I definitely had these moments of thinking, wow, I cannot believe this is actually happening. Like I'm really going to space. And I'll tell you, kind of like, fast forward to last night and pretty much every night since, I've spent my whole life. I mean, I confess to everybody, in the New York City healthcare scene that I have things that make me think of jet engines and flying to space in my bedroom. So I go to bed and I close my eyes, and I spent my whole life fantasizing about going to space. And now I go to bed and I close my eyes and I think about, I've been to space, and I think about the trip, and I realized that was kind of happening in that moment as we were going up. And I was very conscious of, I'd have this time at the top of the arc, looking out the window and experiencing Earth from this absurd distance, which maybe we'll talk about more. But I have to point out that the thing that I really wasn't prepared for intellectually was the trip up and the trip down. And New Shepard, which is the Blue Origin vehicle, they have these awesome giant windows that you're sitting next to. And actually, there's really no other spacecraft like this. So the whole way up, you go from everything being human scale. You can see hardware and bolts on the tower, and you can see individual cactus in the desert out the window. And then you start to see that all fall away, and you see patterns emerge in the desert that at first were familiar, like agricultural patterns that you might be used to seeing from a plane, or a frontal system, clouds. And then all of a sudden, with increasing speed, those things fall away, and you see patterns that you've never seen before, and shadows under those clouds from angles that you've never seen them. And the whole ship rotates very slowly once it's taken off, and it's really just to give everybody a good view. And so as we were going up, it's this very memorable moment for me that the sun kind of comes across my window, and it's very bright, and I close my eyes, but I don't want to miss anything. So I close my eyes, and that kind of, you're at the beach and your eyes are closed and your eyelids are a little warm. Like I have that, and I'm kind of trying to unsquint my left eye so I can continue to see what's happening. And like in that instant, it went from the sky being blue with a little bit of black on the top to the sky being black with a little bit of blue on the bottom. And you see the horizon begin to curve, and it was just this extraordinary experience. And you're watching all this, and it's kind of like you're zooming out. If you go to the Hayden Planetarium, it's nice to be talking to people who at least are New York connected, because hopefully you've been to the Hayden Planetarium, and you go through like the multi-scale pathway. And so you're like zooming out. And then all of a sudden, the main engine cuts off, and it is total silence. And I mean, there's literally no noise, and you can hear the other crew members breathing, and mostly people kind of exclaiming things under their breath, because we were not prepared, again, mentally, for how amazing it was. You have to wait for the capsule to release from the booster. And once the capsule is released, you can unstrap. Before you unstrap, I think I picked up this from, it might have been Sarah Knights or Chris Bosshausen. Sarah trained us, and Chris was one of the other crew members. Like the foam in your seat has springiness that you would never notice on Earth. As soon as you're in this microgravity environment, and you are perfectly velocity vector matched with the capsule you're in. And I've done a bunch of zero-G flights. This company that I actually am a little bit involved in that go zero-G, and they take you on these arcs. And they're great simulation, not simulation, it's really microgravity. But there's air moving the plane, and there's inputs from the pilots. This is just 100% you in the capsule only have one force acting on you, and it's gravity. And you're pushed into your straps by the foam in the seat. And then you release the straps, and you just kind of float out. And it was such a gentle, obviously super foreign feeling. And then I kind of maneuver myself to be upside down, because why wouldn't I? And I got this view of the Earth, just like this absolute blackness of space. There's too much sun reflecting off the Earth, and there's no way your eyes are going to see any stars. They're obviously all out there. And then at the top of the window is just this view of the most visceral interpretation you can imagine of like the word home. And it's like incredibly beautiful. You see the atmosphere is a band, this little blue band, that because you're seeing right through it, a almost hauntingly, terrifyingly small blue band. I can tell. I'm pretty sure that there's probably not a lot of people on this call who don't worry about climate change. But my advice for people who don't want to worry about climate change is do not go to space, because you will realize how fragile the environment we live in is. And I think it might even be my mind playing tricks on me. But I just feel like the blue and the whites of the clouds and green and brown, I think the colors were more vivid than colors I've seen before. And that could be entirely because of the fact that the human body has evolved to function in 1G and with distances that we know and experience. Maybe in the last couple hundred years, humanity's gotten more used to seeing it from higher altitudes. I don't think anybody's really prepared to see it from 350,000 feet above the surface. And again, I think I'm gonna be processing it for a long time. I still don't even feel like I'm articulate about it, but hopefully I'm conveying some sense of like how awesome it is.
Oh yeah, yeah. No mistaking that. The other crew members, obviously, Shatner got a lot of airtime and a lot of publicity. What about the other two crew members?
Yeah.
What were they like? And
they were awesome. And I think the four of us are just bonded in this way that, again, I'm going to have a hard time articulating. And it's one of the reasons where I really think we should talk about the intellectual reasons for it, but I just think emotionally, if you go to space with people and then your understanding of people changes. And I feel like the bonds we made, and this is a very kind of human experience, are a testament to that. We had like a moment at Apogee where we all kind of got in the center of the capsule and we had this kind of group hug when we got back to the ground. Everybody was tearing up and not crying because the tears have nowhere to go up there, and actually crying when we were back on the surface. Audrey Powers is an executive who runs a huge piece of Blue Origin, not pretty much everything related to the vehicle maintenance at New Shepard. So everybody who's working on the vehicle, getting it ready for flight, everybody who's bringing it out to the pad, and all of mission control and operations. So basically, I got to fly with somebody who was a walking encyclopedia of everything about the vehicle and the program that we flew in and on. Audrey is just an awesome person. Her dog Wilson was like our crew mascot. And Chris is a satellite entrepreneur. So he came up with these amazing ideas around using very small weather satellites and swarms instead of big satellites. He's launched hundreds of satellites in his career. We, of course, immediately hit it off. People who love science and engineering and science fiction, and we were going to be able to play this part in turning science fiction into science fact. And
space bros.
Yeah. And then honestly, Bill and it's so weird. I know that it's William Shatner and this guy who I spent my entire life watching on TV and in the movies. But we sat in class together and hung out in the simulator and had this life-changing experience. So like my friend Bill happens to be an actor. He's been pretty successful at it. And I actually think it was really cool for us to have somebody who has spent their career thinking about emotion and conveying it. And I think we all turned into this unit, and I feel like Bill gave us a more sophisticated voice than we would have had without him, and a kind of view into all of our own emotions. So we were a great team. I mean, I love those guys completely. And I'll tell you, you come back to Earth and you see your friends waiting for you, and I don't know, it just gives you this different perspective on how little we are, and then how much you can value stuff. So yeah, just totally life-changing.
So what does this mean for the larger pool of people? I think you've talked a lot about democratization of space and how that's really important to you, obviously very important to you. So how does this help move us forward?
Yeah, so let me take like the more intellectual and kind of to your question, kind of global view of this. Mm-hmm. So I think my official number is the 582nd person in space. That's not that many people. It took 60 years to get that done, right? Since Yuri Gagarin, Alan Shepard went shortly after him. 60 years for 600, let's call it. Mm-hmm. Between Blue Origin and SpaceX and Virgin Galactic and the Russian Space Agency and everybody around the world, I think there'll be 100 people going up next year. So in 1 year, we're going to do 1/6 of what it took 60 years to do. This really feels like a Moore's Law style exponential growth. Why is that important? Well, it certainly, I think, is important from that kind of emotional perspective, what I was talking to. I don't know if it's 10 years from now or 100 years, won't be 100, or 100 years from now, or probably not two, but or a short amount of time. But like if you grew up in New York and you took the Circle Line, which I did as a kid here, to get perspective around Manhattan, they're going to be high school kids going to space, and they're going to get perspective. And I think they're going to feel very differently about the planet and very differently about humanity. But also from a natural resource and utilization perspective, I think this is something that actually all of us in the world of healthcare, certainly in life sciences, actually have I don't know if it's unique, but a better understanding than most people on, because we have like regulators. I'll take the New York City or US centric view. You've got the FDA, you've got academic institutions and publicly funded organizations like the NCI and all the great institutions that create this kind of fabric of intellectual connectivity across the world of life sciences and healthcare. And then you've got Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and Moderna and companies of every size with this industry mass on top of that, and you get this virtuous cycle of innovation. Well, that's what wasn't in the space industry until recently, and what exists now. There's the FAA, there's the regulators making sure public safety is taken care of. There's NASA, right, and international space agencies, but now there are all these companies that are creating that full same stack. Mm-hmm. And I think this innovation cycle is super important. And I don't think it's just about getting people to space, right? So first of all, we do need to get to space. I mean, I think if you look at humans as a colony organism, and maybe that's not a popular thing to say, but I think it's just that we can't see ourselves from the right perspective. I'm sure ants wake up and they're like, well, I'm going to go to work today, and my job is to move grains of sand, and I'm a great sand mover, right? They're not conscious that they're part of this thing. And I think we are part of this thing that's bigger than us as individuals. And we kind of, if we are an ant colony or a termite colony, if it's okay to call everybody termites, myself included, like we ate through the log, right? There are twice as many people on Earth now than there were when I was born. And both myself and, again, I assume almost everybody in this call, we did that, right? Not only did are we the people who are having the babies, but we're also the people who are extending human life and making people live more productive and happier lives, which uses more resources. There is a zero-sum game of stuff on Earth. And I think like humanity needs to do a couple things. One, reach out past where we are. Right? There is more hydrogen and oxygen and H2O in the form that we can use it for water. And we don't have enough water here. Right. At some point, I'm going to do it now. I'd love to plug water.org. I've gotten very excited about an organization that also realizes the virtuous cycle of innovation and machines around economics can actually help fix the problem that like there's 1 out of 9 people on Earth who don't have access to water. We are going to not just find places to get water, but we're going to invent better ways to reclaim water. We're going to find better ways to purify water because of the technologies that we create as we reach outside of our planet. There's no faucets in space. There's no faucet on the International Space Station that just goes into sewage and you could feed from a lake. You have to think about these things. And I really feel like if you look at the way technologies work, the upshot of this new space race, and I mean that in a positive way with this industry, is going to result in things that will benefit not just the people who can go to space. And yeah, I was super privileged to be able to go early, and it's a privilege to start that curve, but let's not pretend it's not going to continue to be something that only a few people will be able to do. Even if we send 6,000 people in the next 10 years, that's a tiny fraction of humanity. But the technologies and the benefits of getting manufacturing up there, making things we can't make, figuring out how to use resources better, all that's going to benefit humankind. And there's so many people who don't, again, probably this call excluded, but don't appreciate that basic research in biology results in curing rare diseases because we realized we had a drug that works on a pathway that is relevant in a different disease, or that quantum physics results in us being able to make smaller microchips that allow us to have social networks and Zoom calls and connect people. And again, I maybe actually people don't even appreciate, we talk about all these sensors and centralized clinical trials and telemedicine and measuring people's behavior in their homes, which I love talking about. we're all wearing a piezoelectric sensor when we're doing those remote monitoring things, which is the exact same sensor that was developed to go up in the Apollo program and look at the attitude of ships. It's just much smaller and on our wrists. But so the emergence of technologies that create benefit and ultimately abundance in the things that are kind of the bottom of our hierarchies of needs: water, food, shelter, preserving the environment and the way we want to see it preserved. That's what this space industry is all about. And that's why I get so fired up about it.
Okay, so besides going to space, which, not all of us can do, what would you recommend we as mere mortals do in order to, kind of take action?
Take action in terms of this kind of next generation of what happens.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is that we're gonna all discover that along the way. I mean, I know a lot of people who do things around 3D organ printing. I think there's a lot of people who have ideas about being able to do that in microgravity is going to change the way we might be able to do it. For people who love 3D printing, I think it's fun as like a hobby. You have to print struts on things so the structure stays in place before it's whole, say round, like a kidney, and you can then have it freestanding. Well, you can't just make struts on a 3D printed kidney and sand them necessarily away. Am I suggesting that we're going to 3D print kidneys in space? Maybe not, but it's the kind of thing where I think thinking about microgravity environments and thinking about research that we can take off the planet is kind of interesting. It gives us a way to think about biology, food production that we might not have on Earth. A friend of mine who's in the space industry made a really cool biological point to me. There's only one thing that has been consistent in the evolution of life on Earth from an environmental perspective. It's not temperature. It's not chemical composition of oceans or atmosphere. It's not atmospheric pressure. It's gravity. And so it's always been 1G. Right. And so thinking about things that we can change in that, I think opens up our minds from a scientific perspective in new ways. I also think that, apropos to what I said before, this is foundational research. This is looking at things, whether it has to do with being 0G versus 1G or not. This is a new frontier where exploration will make a difference. And, I'm certainly not calling them out, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. And I hope he watches some of my podcasts and maybe feels differently. But, Prince William was talking about we should be, focused on problems on Earth, and in some articles. And we invented the way that we look at time because of the British Empire trying to conquer the world over the seas. That's how we know about longitude. That's how we created chronometers. And so you don't see the connections of how different endeavors that humans go on affect our daily lives. And I feel like that what we should all be doing is getting excited about and embracing this big step for humanity. And frankly, I think this idea that experiencing things and this kind of visceral sharing of things as communities might be getting a little bit lost on us. I know it's different when there are people involved, but why wasn't the entire planet biting their nails when we flew a drone on Mars, when we put a helicopter on another planet and flew it a couple months ago? Like, that's probably the greatest engineering achievement in the history of our species. Yet it wasn't like Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon in terms of people's excitement and their inspiration. And so I think that this space race and these opportunities hopefully create a little bit more of that, a sense of global community, a sense of wonder and innovation and exploration. And that's for everybody, right? That's for everybody, I hope, to participate and enjoy.
We are going to talk about, clinical trials, digital health a little bit, but before that, we've got some audience Q&A, and so
Hey, cool.
Let's take it. And so Julie, hey, Julie. Oh, you need to unmute. I don't know.
How's that?
Hey, Julie.
Good.
Hey, good work, guys.
So what's your question, Julie?
Well, I was wondering what it felt like physically. You talked a little bit about it, Glenn, but how did it feel? Like, did you, I don't know, was it like a roller coaster?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't like a roller coaster, but it's definitely different feelings. Like you do 3Gs on the way up, so you're kind of 3 times your weight. You're kind of being pressed down into the seat. It's certainly not uncomfortable. I mean, you're not going to move around and move your arms around and stuff. Zero gravity, or microgravity, technically more correct, was very gentle. I actually have an astronaut friend, I think I'd call him, who works at Carnegie Mellon, my alma mater, and his name's Jay Apt, and he sent me an email before the flight saying, you've done some of these zero-G stuff in planes. 30 seconds and minutes are different. And he was right. Like, it really is this sustained, incredibly gentle thing. You have to be so careful moving around. You can't use your legs. Your legs are too strong to move around in microgravity. You'll like slam yourself into a wall. That was really interesting. And then you strap down in your seat. And actually, if I can kind of extend the answer to your question, Julie, like you're in this thing and you're in this kind of cannonball hitting the atmosphere. And then you slow down very quickly. And that's when you get the most physical force on you. It's about 5Gs, only for like 2 seconds, maybe a little bit less, but 5Gs is enough to kind of feel your skin pulling against your face. It's not, again, uncomfortable, not difficult. Obviously, we've had somebody 82 and somebody 90. Again, we're in good shape, but go through it. But it's not like it was horribly physically taxing. It definitely is a ride, though. I won't pretend it's not.
Nice. Thank you.
You had another, you wrote something else.
Oh, in yesterday's Times, I didn't finish the article yet, but Astro Access, it's a nonprofit initiative that aims to make spaceflight accessible to all, including people with disabilities. And the pictures, if you get a chance, were pretty amazing to see. People who, wouldn't otherwise get to go.
So I know some of the people involved in that. I know all the people who from the Zero G Corporation, the Go Zero G people, and it was awesome what they did. They had people who were deaf and blind and differently abled in different ways. People who have never been like upright, and being in the microgravity environment, being able to float around in the cabin of the 727 that they use for that, I think is a transformational experience. And it's a really good illustration. Actually, honestly, answers part of what you were asking about, Bunny. That this idea of equity and access in regards to space is not just about people who literally have gone to space. It's about thinking about the experience and what we can do with some of these technologies here on Earth too. And that thing that Astro Access that Julie brought up is a great example of that. Just really allowing people to have this experience. And in some people to do, in some cases, research that they just otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And Zero G is doing an awesome job of making that happen.
Okay. Well,
Thank
good.
you.
Great to hear from you, Julie. All right, so switching gears a little bit, since we're all in healthcare, obviously Medidata has been at the forefront of decentralized clinical trials. And actually, let me say this for those who don't know. Glen and Vries, who's co-founder of Medidata, are really pioneers in digital innovation. We talk a lot about digital health now, but you founded this, back in like 22 years ago or so, something like that. When that was not happening at all, and it was definitely not happening in New York. So you truly are, you're a pioneer in space, and you're a pioneer in bringing technology to healthcare. So specifically, clinical trials. So what's going on? What's going on in your world on this decentralized clinical trials?
Well, I think a lot's going on. I mean, and I think to whatever. Very nice of you to say it that way. To whatever degree, we can take credit for playing our part in kind of getting this machine going in and outside of New York. I feel like in the best possible way. I think this is a phrase that people usually use negatively, but I mean it positively. Like the cat's out of the bag. Like, you're not putting this genie back in the bottle. Like, technology in healthcare is here to stay. Honestly, I wish it wasn't that. I feel like I can point to a pandemic as one of the key turning points in that. I think it was, and I think maybe we were better prepared for it because we could start to think about things like decentralized trials and telemedicine. But to their credit, a lot of people were banging their fist on the table saying, why aren't we doing more of this for a long time?
That's right.
Or, it's actually, Bunny and I've talked about this a little bit before. All of a sudden, this idea that we could put a patient and a caregiver in the same room at the same time became a really bad assumption. And just to go back to equity and access for a sec, one of the things that I'm really excited about in terms of telemedicine and decentralized clinical trials and thinking about provisioning and following therapeutic courses that don't require physical co-location. Like, I think one of the really important upshots of this is going to be a much more equitable world where people, regardless of their socioeconomic, geographical, whatever position, are going to be able to get served by better therapies, more precise therapies where they are in their life without having to take off time from work or travel somewhere, because we kind of learn these lessons. And so I feel as energized about what's going on in the world of medicine and healthcare as I do about space. I frankly know a lot more about it. And I think that we built a lot of stuff. We started this virtuous cycle. We had COVID kick us in the ass and get that virtuous cycle turning that much faster. But in a good way, it's just not going to slow down. So I think we're going to see that same kind of meteoric rise in how we think about digital health. I mean, again, I know a lot of people probably on this call are right in the center of it. We're experiencing it every day. It's a great thing.
Well, interestingly, on the digital health front, I mean, the amount of money that is being invested in the space is truly astronomical, off the charts. So like New York, for example, in the first 3 quarters, we're already at 8 billion invested. And last year, the total was 3.6. And we thought that was like incredible.
Off the charts, right?
All right. So in your space, right, like Medable, last week or just announced some like $300 million investment and others in that space. Is this a positive trend? I mean, or not even that, just that's a lot of money being poured into this in new companies. Where do you take all of, like, where's this going? Where's this headed?
So this isn't a comment about Medable or investment in New York. It's more a comment of just like global markets. I mean, I feel like I've been around long enough. I'm old enough to have seen what happens when there are corrections and when bubbles burst. And I think for people who haven't seen that happen or live through it, people might not see it coming, but not really be prepared for it. And so, will that happen at some point? Maybe, like mathematically on a long enough timeline, probably, definitely. But as global markets change, I think what I'm talking about in a very positive sense, and this is to the credit of the Medibles of the world and everybody in the New York City scene, like there is this new level of energy and innovation. And frankly, I just don't see this as a zero-sum game. Again, we are changing dramatically the equations for everything from the return on investment for investing in a new therapy to getting something in the market. Decentralized trials help with that. Different approaches to molecular design, manufacturing, therapeutic platforms help with that, to then the delivery of those medicines and measuring their outcomes at individual and population levels. The piezoelectric sensors that came from the space program that we're wearing, the ability to do a doctor's visit over a call like this. All this stuff is going to create a much richer world. I don't mean that in the dollar sense, a much richer world of health from a quality sense. And there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to participate in that. I obviously have my heart on my sleeve around New York. Yeah, maybe it wasn't a popular place to create a healthcare technology company 20 years ago. And we've made a lot of mistakes over the years, but doing one here was a really good idea. There's a lot of people who, understand how people connect, and a lot of people who understand technology. We got tons from fintech back in the day. And there's a lot of people who are great scientists and physicians here. And so having all that in I know there's other boroughs. I'm in Manhattan, so sorry to be Manhattan centric, but like on one little island that's open 24 hours a day, or at least we'll be back to being open 24 hours a day, is an exciting place to build a business. And so maybe this is the luxury of having been in the business for a couple decades plus, and seeing Medidata find its place in the grand scheme of how people think about research and stuff. But I don't feel hyper competitive. I feel like everybody should be rooting for everybody else in our industry, because we're making this kind of virtuous cycle where everybody's pushing each other and building on what everybody else is doing. So I think this is just a great time. I'm very happy to see that level of investment, and I'm very happy to see the level of the entrepreneurial all the way to large scale companies saying, this is the area I need to invest in. I saw that happen with Dassault Systèmes when they acquired Medidata, right? I mean, a global company, I don't care, what industry it's in, saying, no, I need to be in this business and I'm going to spend $6 billion to do that. That's a big deal, right? It says something important about the life sciences and healthcare business. Something important.
The last time we talked about your exit, I asked you, what's it like to be so rich? So on that note, yes, you did sell, you had a great exit about a year and a half ago. And, I imagine that many entrepreneurs at this point, even though there's this much shorter timeline, they are thinking about exits, right? Some are. What do you remember? Like, what made that the right time for your exit? And you're still with the company, because
right. So I haven't actually exited.
Right.
And look, I actually, I am sure that there are records of me having said this. So in this case, I want to make sure people don't hear it and say, this is the guy saying this who had an exit and he didn't believe it before. We did. Tarek and I have been saying this for years. We never planned an exit. And I think that's really important for businesses. And, I worry sometimes, and I have friends who have built businesses and very successfully, who've created a lot of value, who started it with the intention of selling it or whatever. So I'm not saying that means you're a bad person, but like, you have employees and customers and, in life sciences, ultimately patients who are waiting, who you're serving. And I just, in our frame of mind, Tarek and I thought, and Ed Ikaguchi, the Medidata founder, as well, we did this because we wanted to do it and we wanted to stay with it. And I have seen things happen that are around the evolution of Medidata, and us becoming multinational at one point and opening other offices, and us going public, and us selling ourselves to Dassault Systèmes. These are all things along the evolution of it. And yeah, there've been wonderful things where, for me personally, where I could then afford to go to space. There have also been things that happened that, that people think of as exit strategies where we didn't make any money. I think it's all public record, like our IPO, everybody's like, oh, you did your IPO, you're rich. No, like, we did our IPO for strategic reasons and didn't take any money off the table. So I think you wake up and you go, what's the right thing to do for the people who I'm with and the people I'm serving? And when we found a company that was focused on science, that really wanted to be in life sciences and healthcare in the right way, that was public, which is great from certain aspects, like if you want to do an acquisition, but was majority family owned, which meant that it could have a very long time horizon and patience in terms of thinking about real long-term strategy, which Dassault Systèmes is. They were interested in keeping all of our employees and making sure our clients were happy and doing even more with them. It was like the right thing to do for everybody, our investors included. And so it felt very good to find something like that and have it be a step along the way. But yeah, we just never thought about it like that. Oh, great, there's the door that we'll run out of, and in 3 years from now or 2 weeks from now. I don't know. That's not how we manage it.
Well, Glenn, I mean, you're so excited and passionate about healthcare. What else would you do? I mean, all right, space is one thing, but what are you, so you just changed roles, I see, at Dassault. And so what are you doing?
So, well, I'm actually doing what we're just talking about now. I mean, I'm really thinking about what is this future of healthcare and life sciences. Again, I don't think it's any secret. I say it all the time. Like, I feel like healthcare is done with tools, and the tools come, and the newer and better tools come out of life sciences. So I think Dassault was really smart, I hope, in finding a company that did so much in terms of helping make those new tools. And my job is now figuring out how we take those new tools and not just keep making them better and faster and more valuable, but also how we think about disseminating them, again, from every aspect of equity and access, but also safety and effectiveness and patient value, and making that world of healthcare function that much better. And I will tell you, my job is certainly not to solve all the geopolitical questions around that. The way I think about it is, if we give people better tools every day so they can do a better job in terms of taking care of patients, then we'll at least have made other problems smaller and easier to deal with, or found paths that maybe we couldn't go down if things didn't work as well, work as effectively. And so that's my job, is coming up with strategies for that and making sure that everything we're doing fits into them. So hopefully I'll be right about a couple of things. I'm usually not right about everything, but
yeah. On that note though, access, quality, tools, a big issue is cost, especially in this country.
Yep.
And are you guys thinking about that as well? Like how we can not only save money, but make healthcare more affordable overall to people so that they can access it?
Yeah, and I honestly, I think this is related to some of the stuff I was talking about with kind of water.org, but just the way I kind of think about resources. Yes, we need to make sure that any given therapy is matched more often with the right patient, and that therapy is going to be as successful as possible every time. And there's going to be more complicated and expensive ones, and simpler to administer and cheaper ones. But if we can take that success rate up, that actually is going to help us from a cost perspective. If we can take the invasiveness of something down, if there was something that we required people to go to a clinic for, and we can do some of it in home, or there was something that used to require you to take pills all day long and wake up in the middle of the night to take, and we can give you one pill a day. By the way, that's HIV is a great example of that. You can fundamentally alter the equation for what it costs to live with a condition. We can come up with ways from a research and development perspective to take stuff like rare diseases that we are doing. The Royal Healthcare, and certainly we at Medidata, Dassault Systèmes, in terms of research, taking rare diseases that nobody thought there was a possible way to actually invest in from a biotech perspective or a pharma perspective, and helping people come up with ways to cure them, because we've changed the fundamental return on investment equations of that research. And so I do think that's a problem that we'll work on, even though I'm not sitting there, pounding my fist on a desk in Washington. Again, that's what I mean about kind of doing a better job.
So you've been to space.
Okay.
What's next on your bucket list?
Yeah, I also am not necessarily like really a bucket list guy.
All right. So what's next?
Yeah, I want to take, and I actually thought I would want to do this a couple of weeks ago. I thought that the stuff that I get excited about from a STEM advocacy perspective would be, and to date, it's been very much, I'm a Carnegie Mellon trustee. I love education. I try to support it in as many ways I can. I thought that I would want to continue that, and I would want to be able to take this new experience of space flight and connectivity to the aerospace industry and incorporate it into what I'm doing from an advocacy perspective for STEM. This was one of these like data points that being in space gave me. It was just like, I thought I'd really want to do that more. And I came down really, really, really wanting to do that more. And so I feel like a lot of what's ahead for me is trying to figure out how everyone who has done something in healthcare, life sciences, space, can inspire people to want to do more of that, to create these virtuous cycles, to make sure that careers in life sciences are accessible, that we pull all the people in who we could possibly bring in, who could be part of that, and give them an environment where they can be as productive as possible. That to me is kind of important for altering the pathway of humankind. I know that sounds very grandiose, unlike the New York City healthcare business leaders call, but we're part of it. And again, it wasn't, I didn't need to orbit Earth for a month, which I would love to do one day if I ever can. But you just need to see stuff from a little bit of an extra distance to realize, wow, that's a real thing. And so I'm going to keep trying to push people's thinking in that way.
Okay. Well, are there any more questions from the audience? I've been sort of monitoring to see. Actually, one question I had is, like, did you take anything from this ship? Any memorabilia?
So there's on the top of New Shepard, there's some to describe it, basically installation that is covering the chutes. And I have a couple pieces that were on the ground next to it. There's a patch on your seat that says your name, so I have that. I have my G. de Vries plaque that was over my suit sitting in the astronaut locker room. So, I'll probably put that stuff up on my wall. I took some things for like friends with kids, took some stuffed animals and toys up for them so they could have something that went to space. I took some, I don't know how else to.
What else did you take? That's so cool.
Objects that are important to people in my life who I thought would enjoy that or be inspired by it. So I had a bag of stuff. Everybody had a bag of stuff that they could then distribute around. And so I did that. For me, I was my trinket. I mean, I went to space stuff.
So the four of you, like, do you have a WhatsApp group or something?
We have text thread. And honestly, it's not just the four of us.
What about Jeff Bezos?
I got to meet Jeff Bezos. I actually have to say he's somebody who's so passionate and articulate about this. When you hear him talk about the Blue Origin mission, and the mission is getting millions of people living and working in space for the benefit of Earth. I think when we realize how precious and fragile it is, how important that idea is, does get you pretty fired up. I have a slightly revised version in my head, which is getting millions of people living and working in space for the benefit of Earth, the way we would like to see Earth preserved. Because I'm pretty sure that we could put domes over cities and air condition it and totally fuck up the planet in the process of doing it from a human life perspective. Wow, sorry. It's okay.
It's not a Zoom call without you.
Right.
So I was waiting for it.
Sorry. Well, then you're welcome. If anybody had a betting pool, which I know sometimes happens in my F-bombs, money can change hands now. But I think this idea of preserving it, making sure that we get stuff, and the point is not to just like we dump stuff into the oceans, dump stuff into space, but there's a lot of space. I think there's stuff that we can manufacture probably more efficiently and better off the planet. There's things that we can do from a resource perspective. As I was saying, I think we can really think about this benefit of the earth we want to have in a way that I found Jeff to be super, as I said, articulate, and he got me fired up about it. And so I think what they're doing with Blue Origin is terrific. And honestly, everybody I've met, from Audrey, who's my crewmate, to the test engineers who are working on the rockets. I mean, I feel like we're a bunch of like healthcare nerds. We all like hanging out with each other, and we get each other more and more fired up about healthcare in a good way. Like there's a whole community of people who are just like us. They just happen to be in space, and they're all space nerds, and they just get each other all fired up about it. And it's really nice to see. Again, I feel like people in our world and people in that space world, at least having now crossed in the middle of the two of them, kind of understand each other. We get along just fine.
Okay, I want Roger Waltzman to tell you what he put in the Q&A, because I think this is really nice. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Bunny, thank you. That's really kind of you. Glenn, thank you for a great talk, and Bunny, thank you for outstanding moderation. Glenn, I'm a hematologist oncologist, and after about a decade working in clinical care and clinical research, I've been doing drug development for 15 years. And I just wanted to say, I've worked with teams with Medidata Rave a lot, and my teams love it. It's absolutely their favorite platform. So one, I wanted to thank you, but two, I just wanted to say that, even though I am spending my time trying to help people live longer with cancer or be cured of cancer and use up all of the precious resources that we've just been talking about, please don't lose sight of having your team continue to look at Medidata Rave and think about where there could be improvements or how you all anticipate being able to make it better in some way. We might have ideas from time to time, but I'm sure you all are the experts and come up with better ones. But don't forget about how reliant we are on it and what a great tool it is. And the better it can be, the better for all of us.
So first of all, thank you for your comments. And let me reassure you that the team, and this is a bigger team than it's ever been, is so focused on making sure we do that. Honestly, I'm one of those people who feel like sometimes you need to get different people's hands on stuff to be thinking about things differently and better. I think one of the things that really helped us when we were first developing Rave is we had this combination of people who we were doing research ourselves and new stuff, but we also had kind of like our clinical trial blinders on, and we mixed in some people who didn't have that. And I'm both excited, but also super encouraged by some of this, even early things that I've seen, as we were able to say, Tarek and I'm talking about this, okay, great. Rama, Sastry, Anthony, why don't you guys, officially put your hands, on the wheel of the ship and see how you can steer it, and to not just them, but everybody on the Medidata teams. Rave is a thing in and of itself. I feel like I have so much more to do in my life. So I don't mean that in a pat myself on the back way, but I get it. It's a privilege that it's such a big piece of research infrastructure, and they are all laser focused on making sure that it stays that way, and we serve everybody like you who are using it from a research perspective. But I really appreciate you saying that. It feels really nice to hear, and I'll take that.
Yeah, you're welcome, and we're delighted to use it.
Cool.
Thanks for doing that. I mean, yeah, it was serendipitous. It was all true, Glenn. So we are coming to the end of our time. I just want to thank you so much for doing this, for talking to us. I always have so much fun listening to you, but I also just get really charged up. You're so passionate, and it's infectious.
Well, good. It's great to talk to you as always. So thanks for having me.
Okay, well, thanks again.
All right.
Thanks everybody for joining us today.